So, I find this to be a poignant moment in Battlefield 2042's life cycle, as it marks the release of the final season that was packaged with the game to players who bought the gold edition of the game or better. Now, if you're like me and got particularly burned by purchasing such an edition of the game, this is it. The culmination of that $110 purchase. By this point, I've had an opportunity to play a fair amount of Battlefield 2042's 4th season. I've gotten some hands-on time with all of the new weapons, gadgets, vehicles, specialists, the works. So it begs the question, was it all worth it? G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we ask the question, is Battlefield 2042 worth your time now, post-release of Season 4? So to get us started, I want to give a quick overview to what Season 4 brings to Battlefield 2042 for those who may be a little bit out of the loop as to what is going on with the game. But then we will dive into the greater question of this video, that being, should you buy Battlefield 2042 in 2023? But much like all of the seasons that have come and gone before, we see the introduction of a new specialist, new weapons, a new gadget, and a new map to play with here in Season 4. And I've really got to say here that it's just such a mixed bag as far as the quality of the content we got is concerned, as well as how good the items are actually for the health of the game. We'll start off with the new map, Flashpoint. This map is probably the biggest mixed bag of the update, depending on your game mode of choice here. If you're a player who, like me, prefers the breakthrough game mode, I'm sorry, but this ain't your season. The map plays pretty horribly on breakthrough. It feels like the map either devolves into an ongoing stalemate on one of the key objectives, or just a total landslide from go to woe. There really doesn't feel like there's any kind of middle ground here for 99% of the games you'll play on this map. The points of interest that were chosen for breakthrough and how they interact with the terrain around them really creates some of the harshest firing angles and verticality that makes it difficult for both attackers and defenders to have any real freedom of movement on this map. It really is a damn shame, especially as someone who prefers the breakthrough game mode. Now granted, I haven't played much Conquest on the new map, but I have heard that it is far better on that game mode comparatively. So if that's the case, let us know in the comment section down below. I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. So yeah, overall, the new map is a big mixed bag depending on your game style of choice. The Specialist also falls into the category of being a mixed bag for me here as well. Blasco, a new recon specialist, comes to the battlefield with a new gadget that acts as a sort of a AoE jammer, if you will. It will cancel any lock-on attempts for vehicles that are caught within its radius, will reveal all enemy deployables within its range, and will disable the minimap for all enemies caught within its range as well. That last one in particular is a big one for me. It brings some awesome synergies to the table with, say, Irish's APS system to help protect vehicles, but far out, it's really intrusive to standard infantry gameplay, frustratingly so. So I'm personally hoping that some revisiting is done to this specialist gadget in the future, but I'm not going to hold my breath here knowing how things have been done in the past. And speaking of intrusive, holy smokes, we have to talk about the SPH grenade launcher that is now available to the Assault class. This is a multi-shot grenade launcher that fires sticky explosives. Now, as you would expect, if you stick an enemy player directly with this thing, it's an instant kill. Fair enough, I consider that to be working as I expect it to do so. But what really caught me off guard here was just how much splash damage this thing has. Seriously, you don't necessarily have to stick someone with this thing, and it will still get the job done of being an incredibly effective standard grenade launcher. What it basically does is means that you no longer need to run an underbarrel grenade launcher on your assault rifle, and you can save that attachment slot for something along the lines of a grip, and still have the corner camping Rat Exterminator 5000 in your loadout, and just blow people up left, right, and center. It really is just stupidly effective, but it also really adds another form of ranged explosive to the game, which, quite frankly, the game did not need. In my opinion, it only exacerbates the general spammability and frustration that comes from the amount of explosive spam in this game at times. Similar to Blasco's gadget, I'm hoping this gadget is also revisited in due time as well, because despite how much fun I'm actually having using or abusing it, depending on how you look at it, it's not good for the game and just the general experience, not one bit. Lastly, we also have the new weapons here. We saw 4 new base weapons added to the game here, as well as 2 new vault weapons. I'm going to be doing a video discussing these weapons in a bit more detail shortly, but I must be real, I'm pretty impressed with these weapons and how they feel so far. All of the base weapons feel like they're worthwhile additions to the game without feeling too overpowered, and yes, I would even put the Super 500 secondary shotgun into that category. I know, again, a bit shocking. When I saw this shotgun in the trailer, I was deeply concerned, but after using it a while, I thought, well, it's not too bad. Again, more on these new weapons shortly, but I must say that using these new weapons has probably been my personal highlight for the season so far. But okay, brand new content aside from Season 4, I really wanted to use this video as an opportunity to really consider if Battlefield 2042 is worth your time or even your money if you haven't bought the game yet in 2023. We are effectively a year and a few months into this game's life cycle now, and to DICE's credit, a lot has changed in the game for the better since it came out. Despite this, I must admit, playing this game even now after all this time is still the equivalent of rubbing salt into an open wound for me on the regular, because, well, I know how this game released and I know what it really could have been if it released as a good game. I remember the day one experience all too well, before any of the base game maps were overhauled, before any of the game-breaking bugs were fixed, before bolts and hovercrafts were nerfed and were running rampant around maps. Unfortunately, this game, to me, represents one of the greatest failures in the first-person shooter genre of all time. I mention this because I know a lot of other people do enjoy this game, which is fine, I get it, you have fun in the game, I'm not here to, knock you down for that. Just know that this is where I, and many others in the community, come from as die-hard Battlefield fans. We know what could have been and are just completely disappointed that that's not what eventuated. But as I said, a lot has changed and for the better, so I'm going to do my best to assess the game entirely as it is now and not what it was. Assess it as, is the game worth your time right now in 2023? At the game's core, a lot has been addressed that pushes the game far closer to being a quote-unquote Battlefield game, if you will. The most impactful update to have come to the game's feel by far is, without question, the return of the class system. Now yes, specialists are still here to stay as far as the appearance is concerned, but they are now all sorted into 4 distinct classes that fall in line with what long-time fans will be familiar with, that being Assault, Support, Engineer, and Recon. From a gameplay perspective, this adds some much needed readability to the game for both enemy and friendly player interactions. You now know who to go to for health and ammo on your team, and you now know who to target on the enemy team depending on the situation you are in. To many Battlefield players out there, it may sound like just an absolute no-brainer decision, but by just returning to a staple feature of the franchise, alongside the improvements to the general quality of life since launch, it's made the game a much more enjoyable experience comparatively speaking. Mouse input has been improved significantly, weapon recoil mechanics are now operating as they should, there's a scoreboard in the game, for one, I can't believe that still didn't make it in at launch. Hell, just with the release of Season 4, the act of loading into a match has been sped up significantly. It's a minor change, but a welcome one to keep the gameplay flowing in your session. Again, this is all good stuff, but yeah, there's always a but, isn't there, guys? To loop back to the return of the class system, there's still something that feels out of place here for me, personally. And that is the aesthetics of the specialists, if that makes sense. I remember in the days of Battlefield 3 and 4 in particular, where everyone was just a generic soldier, a small cog in the machine of a larger team. And while yes, the gameplay functions similar to how it does in Battlefield 2042 now on a class level, you looked around the map and saw yourself among an army of soldiers. No names, no special abilities, no fancy skins, just a bunch of classes of a team looking to win the day on the battlefield. And when it came to the moment where you and the enemy team clashed, it was just another army of soldiers clashing with you. You never shot at an enemy player who looked identical to the medic that just revived you on your team. There was a sense of separation there. There wasn't Falk versus Falk or McKay versus McKay. You never shot a player that looked identical to you. And it really sold you on the sense of conflict that older Battlefield titles did such a good job of conveying. Their simplistic approach to character design and making you feel like you were a part of a larger unit by making your character nothing special and doing the same for your enemies really sold the fact that you were on a battlefield. When I first read the setting and the premise for Battlefield 2042, you know, the lore, if you will, the idea that the world was on the brink of collapse due to a changing world with climate change and two superpowers at each other's throat for global control, holy shit, I was sold on the premise immediately. But instead, what we got was a game that has a bunch of clones running around on each team killing each other. It hardly conveys the feeling that you are in fact in a larger conflict that previous Battlefield games have sold themselves on. The point is that the game still feels soulless. Despite being better mechanically, it doesn't feel like a Battlefield game. It just feels like a really generic, sometimes horde shooter. And unfortunately, that is a bit of a consistent theme here as we go forward. But that does segue us nicely to the content offering of Battlefield 2042 now. Content-wise, with all of the seasons that have come out now, the game certainly feels closer to what I would expect from a Battlefield title. It's funny actually, it's almost as though an extra year of development time before release would have gotten this game where it needed to be worth our hard-earned money, again, from a content perspective. But anyway, that's, you know, here and gone now. We now have 11 maps in the game, which is relatively on par with what we would expect to see from a Battlefield release at launch. These maps differ heavily in quality in my opinion, but the maps that have come out with the seasons as the game has progressed have certainly demonstrated some learning from DICE and some maturity in designing solid gameplay spaces. Unfortunately, this hasn't translated too well to the map reworks that have been done on the base game maps. There are some base game maps that are in this game still, despite their reworks, that for me are just automatic back out to lobby maps, and I just fundamentally choose not to play them due to their core issues and gameplay flow. Also, and this is a feature that is consistent across the game's entire map offering, none of the new maps really feel like they lean into one of Battlefield's pinnacle features: destruction. In fact, the portal maps feel like they bring more to the destruction table by comparison to the base game maps, which is a shame given how rarely these maps appear in base game playlists. It's certainly a sign of the game that continues to be amiss here and just really takes some of the soul out of the game once again. It makes it feel a lot more static, a lot more generic in nature, if you will. Now, moving on to weaponry here, the game now features 51 weapons to use in just the standard all-out warfare mode. However, this number also includes the vault weapons that have very little to no progression or integration with the game's attachments offering, so take that with a grain of salt. Given that we launched with only 22 weapons in the game, this is a surefire improvement, don't get me wrong. But much like the maps, it is such a mixed bag here. Some of the weapons feel fine, some are complete garbage that feel like filler content, and others just feel like they completely invalidate a whole weapon category entirely. Looking at you, Railgun. Again, there's just a lacking presence in the offering here. Yes, the quantity is there, and it's starting to feel in line with the offerings that should come from a AAA first-person shooter title, but the consistency in the quality leaves just so much to be desired, and is reminiscent of a development team that was playing catch-up from day one, unfortunately. So, as a final conclusion, is Battlefield 2042 worth your time and or money in 2023? There's no denying that the game is better and has come a long way since launch. We can all agree that the game never should have launched the way it did, but that's come and gone, and right now in this moment, Battlefield 2042 is certainly an improvement over what it once was. But despite all of that hard work to get this game caught up to where it should be, I can't help but feel that the game just lacks a sense of soul. It doesn't feel like a Battlefield game to me, unfortunately, still to this day. It may carry the Battlefield title, it may carry the Battlefield franchise tag, but some of these core design decisions and some of the features that have been left out of the game entirely or really minimally used just don't sell it to me as a Battlefield title worth your time. If the game is on sale and you can pick it up for a dirt cheap deal, say 20 to 30 bucks, then sure, go for it. It's an at times fun generic shooter that can have its moments and can somewhat replicate the feel of a Battlefield game at times. But just know that 99% of the time here, you are picking up a very subpar Battlefield game at its core. But folks, with all of that said, I now want to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below on Battlefield 2042 post-Season 4. Is the game worth your time? Is it worth the time of the wider community? Or is this something that should be shoved straight to the delete folder or to the back of the cupboard and never touched ever again? Let us know down below. If you enjoyed today's video, a backhanding of the like button will go a long way to supporting the channel. And if you find yourself enjoying the content content, hit subscribe so you stay up to date with more videos coming out in the future. Once again guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care guys. Have a good one.